This is the end of the beginning. Welcome to today's show. A lot of people have asked me over the last week to cover this story about a book being published on Amazon on August the 10th that was describing the situation over in Maui while it was occurring. So there's a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of articles that were written. And this has obviously ignited a quote-unquote conspiracy theory about the government releasing a book beforehand. And I wanted to give my thought. So many people have asked me and are wondering why I haven't covered this or hadn't covered this yet in everything that I've been covering. And the reason I haven't covered it yet is that there's no evidence to show or suggest that the government actually released this book. Because what this looks like, if you actually look at this book, is that this was somebody who took advantage of Chat GPT. If you're not familiar with the technology that's out there now, which is way more advanced that we don't know about, but at least the technology that the public could actually access, you could actually write a book in less than 24 hours if you. That doesn't mean one way or the other that the government didn't put the book out, or if some guy was just trying to make money off things like this. I mean, this isn't really going to do anything other than ignite a conspiracy, but it's also going to take attention actually going on there, which of course is a loss of life, and the main focus should be on the fact that our own government was willing to do this to their own citizens. And what's even more telling is the fact that you look at this government, you look at this national divide, you look at how it's Republican versus Democrat, and you realize that this is a democratic communist government in place, and that is one of the most democratic states that there is, and they're willing to do that to their own voters, quote unquote, even though we know votes don't count. So those should be the main narratives, and of course the lives that were tragically lost, and what happens next with the victims who were there who seem to be trapped on the island. But I'll look more into this book now because I know a lot of people out there wanted me to cover it since I cover most of these topics. And the book, of course, is called Fire and Fury. I'm sure most of you heard about it already. The story of the 2023 Maui fire and its implications for climate change. So one of the problems I think we're going to continue to see over the next couple of years before Agenda 2030 is that any of these events that they create, there's going to be books that come out written by ChatGPT immediately. And why this is a problem is that this actually helps spread propaganda much faster because it accumulates all of the stories that are out there. It scrapes the internet of all these stories, all these interviews, and it's able to suck it together and then make a book about it. Now, this book is only 44 pages, and of course, you could see that the book. The author's Dr. Miles Stones, and the first thing, of course, I think of when I hear that is the Bible, which most people should hear that, and that's the verse in Matthew chapter 18, verse 6. If anyone causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me, to stumble, it would be better for them to have a large millstone hung around their neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea. Now, we know, unfortunately, that a lot of children, of course, tragically perished in this. And if you watch the video I did yesterday, they were even talking about, conveniently, the police officer from Las Vegas, who is now in Maui, who also has trapped the citizens and blocked the roads for people to escape Lahaina while all this was going on, was talking about how it was actually melting through metal, which is a new one. But back to this story. This isn't the only book that came out either. Another book also was released at the same time, pretty much a couple days later, which shows you that people are taking advantage of this ChatGPT to also make money off of it. Now, I know people are going to be like, no, it was written by the government. Well, how could you say that? Well, it doesn't need to be written by the government. Remember, we have a society of soldiers who are working for the government. Anyone who is a Democrat is doing the bidding of the Communist Party, right? And they're not only are they regurgitating propaganda, but they're promoting propaganda and they're shoving it back out into society. So by printing a book like this, the government doesn't even need to do this themselves. They know that they have an army of people who are under such strict mind control that cannot think for themselves, that the natural thing for them to do would be to repropagate this propaganda and to blame it on climate change. These people are blaming it on climate change, and even the government hasn't even come out and fully started pushing the climate agenda because they know it's so obvious what actually occurred there, which shows you that the government doesn't even, hey, this was climate change. Hey, we got to do something about carbon emissions. That their own followers of the Democratic Party will come out and just continually blame it for them on climate change. That's how bad this has gotten. There was a point where they had to constantly push the propaganda. Now these people will do it for them. I mean, we even hear people, which I can't talk about here on YouTube, but we see this new variant that has popped up. And without the government even saying anything, these same people are out there demanding that we go back to masking. Okay? And if you watch old propaganda films on the Communist Party, this is exactly the same thing. So Fire and Fury is one of the books that is out there now. And then again, there's other books that have been written in the last 7 days, and these aren't written by real human beings. Another one called Forgiving, called Pre-Planned and Inside Information was also written. Now, this actually could have been written, but clearly the other one, all it did was it scraped the information from the internet, because even in that book, it talks about 6 people being dead. And now we know the public count is over 100 or close to 100 as of me doing this video. But if you actually watch some of the videos and listen to some of the people on Twitter who are on the island, who show that they're on the island, the numbers are, in the thousands. But the media is not going to really cover those, types of things. They're going to keep it at a lower number because they don't want it to seem too obvious that they were behind doing this. So you have to be careful with some of these stories. I'm not saying you could have whatever opinion you want on this, but a book with 44 pages, to be able to have that produced in the middle on August 10th, while this was still occurring through August 11th, is not difficult to do. It's not difficult to do for even a human being to write the book for 44 pages. You could write that in a day. But with the technology, most of these ChatGPT to do all the work for them. So somebody could have easily just looked at this and said, hey, you know what? I'm going to try to take advantage of this, and maybe people, even if they think it's a conspiracy, will buy the book and I can make a buck off of it. And you might see this more and more often. This might become more prevalent in the events. And of course, whatever narrative the media has is going to be the narrative that comes out of these books. Because if it's an algorithm doing it, if ChatGPT is doing it, all it's going to do is suck all the information, because that's how ChatGPT technically works in a sense. It's going to suck all of the propaganda information that comes out of ABC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC, and it's going to regurgitate it, right? And then people are like, well, how do they have interviews with people? Well, it just takes the interviews you see on TV. It could just read those interviews. When I upload videos here, it's reading and listening to what I'm saying. It used to be less enhanced. At least I know they had the technology, but they weren't using it as much, where they would just take words off of the screen. So you see me a lot of the times block words in the screen because the algorithm is reading the word. Now the algorithm is way more advanced. And again, they've had this technology for a long period of time, but Google hadn't been using it as much, especially on YouTube, probably because the algorithm can't pick up what way you're discussing these topics, right? It can't pick up sarcasm. It can't pick things like that up, which is why I tend to use sarcasm a lot on my channel. You'll see, my tone has changed a lot over the years, not because I find this stuff funny, but, I try to make it so it's a little bit more, harder for them to understand, or harder to pinpoint, whether I'm making light of the topic, whether I'm pretending to be one of these clowns on YouTube or not. So you have to kind of work around their algorithm in a sense. That's what we're all trying to do here on YouTube, despite the severity of what's going on in the world. But again, if the algorithm could pick up what I'm saying, if the algorithm could pick up words in videos, right? Then easily what they can do with these types of things, depending on what kind of algorithm, depending the ChatGPT from, it's going to suck all that out. So an interview with a person, it's going to have all the words of the person's name, it's going to have the things the person says, and it's going to quote them, and it's going to throw it into these books or these articles. Most of these things now aren't being written by human beings. I mean, any of the stuff you read from like any of these, CNN. I mean, you think humans are writing the majority of this stuff? They're just the same propaganda. So that it becomes a danger too, because things like this, obviously this isn't something that's really a threat. The problem more so with this, and again, I'm not, people are like, well, I can't believe you don't believe that the government released this book. Well, it's a pointless, meaningless book that has 15 reviews. I mean, the government doesn't need to release something like this, to say, oh, it's, we're giving you the finger and we're releasing a book promoting climate change, because no, it's an Amazon book, right? Anybody could publish a book on Amazon. And the same author of this book supposedly published a book about the Hunter Biden laptop. Right? So that's another thing that's out there. And if there's do this stuff to try to make money, this is a good way to do it, right? I mean, you put no work into it, you just publish it, and then people are going to buy it whether they believe the propaganda in it or not, because they want to cover the topics. And here's an excerpt from the book, so you could decide for yourself if this sounds like a robot wrote it or if an actual human wrote it. I mean, right off the bat, you could tell it's not a human. On the 8th day of August in the year 2023, I mean, what human's writing like that? So on the 8th day of August in the year 2023, an unfortunate incident occurred in the upcountry region of Maui, and a fire was ignited. This fire swiftly escalated into an extensive wildfire, rapidly engulfing the entire island. Its ferocious advancement was augmented by a combination of unfavorable conditions, including drought, scorching temperatures, and ferocious hurricane winds. The flames eventually reached Lahaina, which possesses immense historical significance for Maui. Tragically, a significant portion of its cultural and economic heritage was obliterated by the fire's relentless fury. Moreover, the fire posed a grave menace to other parts of Maui, comprising residential zones, agricultural lands, and natural ecosystems. Regrettably, the fire took the lives of 6 individuals, decimated over 270 structures, and scorched more than of land. I mean, that sounds exactly like something that's just reading and then putting it out there and then trying to, which is what ChatGPT does, try to make it sound like a human is saying it. But this doesn't sound like a human being, right? Little triggers in there like on the 8th day of August in the year 2023. Nobody's writing that in a book, unless it's a fictional book, because that sounds like it's coming out of a fictional book. Now, we can all look at this event and say, well, this is a scripted event. Well, there's no doubt that it's scripted. I mean, nobody's doubting that. They didn't just wake up and decide that they were going to hit it with a direct energy weapon. This is something they've been planning for quite some time, which is why I believe, they were asking in advance people to sell their land when they knew that not everybody would sell their land. The majority of people didn't sell their land. In fact, I don't think anyone sold their land, which is, again, is one of the ways that they, in their own head, try to convince themselves that there's not blood on their hands. Well, we all hands before we did what we did, and they didn't go. So what? We did. We had to do what we had to do. And remember, they believe their good deeds outweigh their bad deeds. So something that is like an extremely bad deed, which is pretty much everything these people do. I'm pretty sure in their twisted minds, they believe that they could torch an island, torch people of the island, torch their homes, torch their families, torch it all, and then hold the door open for somebody else when they go into a Applebee's and they think that look, my good deeds outweigh my bad deeds. I held the door open for someone. I think that's how twisted they are. I don't think it's even any more so than that. Some people are like, well, you balance it out. They did that and then they donate money. Well, they print money. So money means nothing to these people. So there's these 2 books out there. Obviously, this one book came out while all this was going on. But is it that somebody could have done this, trying to make money, knowing that this type of technology exists? See, the thing is that a lot of people don't know that the book is 44 pages. A lot of people don't know that ChatGPT could write a book in hours. A 44-page book, it could write it probably in like a few minutes, to be honest. You put in the topic, you put in the talking points, the climate change stuff. It'll suck it all up. It'll scrub it right off the internet. And then obviously, it has a formula in place, right? This stuff has a formula so that it tries to sound like a human, but it'll never sound like a human, because just like certain people can never turn into the opposite of what they're born, robots will never be human as much as they try, even though we'll be mixing iron and clay very soon. If, for the most part, we already have mixed iron and clay, mixing humans and technology, but that's another topic for another day. So I wanted to cover this because I see that so many people have been, getting in an uproar about it, but you got to just be careful with this stuff. Does it mean that the government didn't release it? No, of course not. I'm just giving you my opinion on it. I mean, what would the government need to release a book on Amazon for that has 15 one-star reviews? They get thousands of views. They control all of the media. So you could say, well, they did it because they wanted to show you that they did this ahead of time. Well, everybody knows they did it ahead of time. There's trees that aren't burned. There's cars. There's metal is being melted during a forest fire. Boats are catching fire offshore. There was no rain. There was no hurricane. Okay, so the fact that like I said earlier, there's already people out there without even the media. The media is barely covering the story anymore. Okay, the media has moved back to Trump, and they barely covered it when it happened. They covered it that day and the next day, and they're like, oh, the poor victims. And then they saw all of this firestorm come in about a direct energy weapon, which I believe they did not expect. even though they should have expected it after what happened in California. Maybe they did, and they just said, hey, we got to do this anyway. This is going to be the way that we, this is a weapon we're going to use, and we'll just poo-poo it, and we'll mention climate change, and then we'll move on. We won't harp on it. No pun intended with harp. And, that'll be that. And then you watch all the stories out there, and they actually have created such an army of brainwashed zombies that these people are out there fighting for the government. They're telling everyone, if you question this stuff, you're a conspiracy theorist. They're saying, oh, we should still fund Ukraine over Maui. That's how insane these people are. They're literally psychopaths, and they don't have any thought in their own mind, but they think that they do. So this book is out there. Don't think too much into it. I wouldn't. That's just my opinion. You're allowed to think whatever way you'd like to think. Dr. Miles Stones, okay, obviously it couldn't be a faker name. Now you could say, well, they use a fake name. What's this a fake name? What's this a fake name to try to hide it? Sure. But it's not like it's an in-depth, detailed book. It's 44 pages. So this reeks of ChatGPT. It just reeks of somebody trying to make a buck. But the danger of this type of technology is that if people keep using ChatGPT to write books and do this stuff, it's going to flood the market with propaganda, right? Any of these events, just say that we had this technology in place, and they had this technology, but just say it was in place for the public on the 11th of September. Every book out there would have just been regurgitated propaganda. Thankfully, then it wasn't. And thankfully, so many people wrote stuff talking about all the things that didn't line up. And obviously, a lot of people woke up then. Now, most of you know my awakening happened with McMartin Preschool, but a lot of people woke up with events like Waco, events like the 11th of September. And if this type of technology was open to the public, it might have flooded all of the media out there where people wouldn't be able to find any other books or anything talking about it. And they would have just got sucked into artificial intelligence telling them the same thing over and over in a different twist, right, with a different voice. So this is what we can expect in the future, though. People are going to use this type of stuff with every single event, and all these books are going to come out, and these books are going to pop up before books by people like myself, even though I don't write books. Maybe I will in the future, but that's what we can expect. So I thank everybody for being here. That was my opinion on it. Hope you're all doing well. God bless you as always and your families.